Hi, this is Gary from Gary's Grow Your Own Food, and today I'm going to do a little bit different. It's going to be just more of a talk. One thing that I've noticed within the garden community, especially the vegetable people, we've kind of become elitist in how we garden. We think this is the best way, and we always go for the best way. And it's almost like trying to sell someone a car, and you're always trying to sell them a Lexus when all they really need is something to get back and forth to work. A Corolla works just as well. And people garden for different reasons. And one of the reasons people garden, some people are trying to save the earth. Some people enjoy growing stuff, and that's kind of where I fall in to it. And other people, they garden because they like the taste of fresh grown produce. Some people like the idea of the fact that you know what you're spraying on your produce, or the fact you're not spraying anything on your produce. And and that's all well and good. I'm not making fun of any of those people. I'm part of them. Some people want to go all organic, and that's nice. But when I was growing up, my dad, and I say grandfather on the deal because if I was to talk to my kids, this is what I'd be telling them. Your grandfather, but my dad, he gardened for one reason only. He's trying to save money. He was trying to raise a family of 6 on a government pension, on a government salary, which government does not pay very well, despite what some people think. And he was trying to compete with the grocery store and grow in a way that you would save money. Now, we never heard of raised beds. We never heard of a lot of the stuff that's come out now. And those are nice. I got one over there, a Vigo bed. I enjoy those beds. But Daddy had worked for the former Trump administration, and one of his jobs was to tell people, is it cost effective to do this? And his kind of a big, you got to justify your purchases if you're trying to save money. And like a farmer would want to buy a combine, he said, well, could you do it cheaper by doing custom? And a lot of times it was cheaper because that combine would sit for 10, 11 months out of the year, use it for a month or two. Easier to try to find somebody that would do it custom, and that way they would use it, they'd follow the harvest. So that's kind of how Daddy approached gardening. And when he first approached gardening, this is the way Daddy did it. Okay, so this is going to be a video for people that you're just really wanting to garden to save money. And you really can't count your time, because if you do that, nothing's ever going to work. But if you're a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad, and you've got some extra time and you want to grow produce because you're having a hard time making ends meet, and you want to do it the cheapest way possible, that was my dad. Now, one thing about it you have to consider, first off, you have to have decent soil. And so if you're in a very rocky area, or if I was in true modeling clay type of clay when I was in Beaumont. And this is the type of clay, if you dug a hole and you would take it out in chunks, and you have to put it back in chunks, and you could not grow in ground there. But so if you have extremely wet soil, extremely sandy soil, you can't do it. But most areas, most people have fairly decent soil, because the areas around town usually was old cropland fields. May not be the best, but it's doable. And what Daddy did is, when we bought the house, he'd done this before, but when I was junior high or whatever, we had a vacant lot besides. Daddy bought an extra lot when we bought the house, and that's where we did our garden. It wasn't a very big garden. It was probably a 30 by 35 at most, probably smaller than that, because Daddy would never buy a tiller. The reason Daddy would never buy a tiller, he says, tillers cost $400. You'll never make $400 worth of food off that garden. You just can't make any money off of it. Why would you spend money on a tiller? And kind of has a point. Tillers are expensive. Do I have tiller? Yeah. But here's the way Daddy did it. He had low overhead. These two things is all he had. He had a shovel, which you kind of need to have a shovel to bury the bodies, occasionally, dead cat or something. So you have a shovel anyway. If you're going to plant something, you need a shovel. And he would have a hoe. That's what he gardened with. So, sorry about the camera problem. So the way he would do it, mark off the area he wanted to garden, take the shovel, he would dig it, and dig a line, take the soil, turn it over, take a step back, start the next line. And he would line out and dig up that garden. So it didn't cost him anything. A lot of time, a lot of breaking work, but that's the way he did it. And he would turn that soil under, turn all the grass under. Now, he was not in a yard setting. If you got Bermuda grass yard you're trying to do it in, you're going to have some problems because you got to get rid of that Bermuda grass, and it's tough. I don't want to say tarp it, but when you start buying a tarp, then you start spending money. But really, digging it up and doing that method like I was talking about, or tilling it up, you're going to make it worse. So the only thing I would say if you just want to try to do something this year was take a tiller, till real lightly the first couple of times, scrape all that stuff off, and then try to till out, knowing you're still going to have problems, because any little piece of that grass, Bermuda grass that stays there, is going to resprout and regrow. So then after he would do that, he would dig out that area. Here's what you use for his weed control. You pull weeds and you use a hoe. And he would plant beets, carrots, lettuce, green beans, pinto beans. One part of the garden was made for watermelons, cantaloupes, that sort of stuff. One time we grew pumpkins. Why? I guess he was having fun. He didn't do everything just for food, but that's the way we gardened. He would never irrigate except for the tomatoes and peppers. He would do that. But he said if you irrigate and you run up a water bill, you're not making money. So if he had a year that was really dry, you just didn't make anything in that garden that year. He was not going to water the beans and the peas and that sort of things, field peas. That's just not what he did, because he was doing it to save money. Now, fertilizer, we used synthetic fertilizers. I still use synthetic fertilizer. It's way cheaper. I can fertilize with synthetic fertilizer and at 10% the cost of what it would be for organic. Is organic better? Yeah. Is it cost effective? A lot of times it's not if you got a very big garden. Unless you can get that organic matter for free or a really reduced rate, you get it in bulk, chip drop, something of that nature. But if you're having to buy stuff out of a bag, it works okay in a raised bed situation, but if it costs you $1 a square foot to amend that raised bed, okay, in a 30 by 35 foot in-ground garden, it's going to be about 1,000 foot. So you can pay $1,000 and amend that bed, amend it like you would that raised bed, or you could buy a 50-pound bag of fertilizer, cost you about $25, $30, and you're done. So now, you're not going to feed in the soil and doing all this other stuff, but that's not your primary goal. Your primary goal is to reduce your food bill. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't care how poor I was, I don't think I would use a shovel to dig it up with. Okay, and later Daddy had a tractor. When he moved out the country, he used an 8-in Ford tractor to plow it up. But if you're in town, if you're going to use a tiller, really think the best way to do it to be cheap is go ahead and rent that tiller out. Get you a good tiller that's the rear tine tiller, because those front tine like that one there is going to buck you all over the place. They jump and start. These things don't butt near as hard, and you can use that to break up to do that initial breakup of that soil to get it to where you can work it. And because the problem with this tiller is, paid close to $1,000 for it. Now I got problems with it. I'm gonna have to get it worked on and all that. I've already went through 2 belts with it. They become a headache. So I've already got my garden plot tilled up. I've tilled up for about 5 years now, so it's pretty much tilled up as much as it needs to be as far as getting initial. I've got the grass and stuff out of it. So this year, rather than mess with this thing, I did go with an electric tiller. There's one big problem with an electric tiller, and that's this end piece right here. Now, this is not a very good tiller. If I was going to try to till up this ground around here, there's too much grass, too many tree roots, you're going to have problems with it. I don't think it'll do a very good job. But if all you're doing is, I'm going to till that soil up, I've already got it tilled up before, I'm just trying to get rid of some of that residue and stuff and try to bury it in the soil. This little Sunjo, I mean, it works pretty well, but you do have a 100-foot extension cord limitation on it. Now, I live in Texas. I live close to the coast. I'm about 35, 40 miles from the coast, maybe 50. And we get hurricanes fairly often, so I've got a generator. So what I do, I just take the generator out there, crank it up. It gives me a reason to use that generator to keep it running, because the worst thing you can do with the generator is put gas in it, run it for and then shut it off and let it sit for 2 years. So this gives me a reason to run that thing and run it for a little while. So I'll hook this thing up and we go forward with it the first pass and we pull it backwards like this, and that's where it does most of the real tilling. The forward, it kind of jumps and jumps around and skips over the top of it, but whenever you take it and you start pulling it backwards, that's where it really does its tilling. This thing's $169. Not trying to sell it, not associate. They make other kinds, but that would be a cheaper way of, okay, once you get your ground tilled up, go to something like this. And I would stay away from the gas-powered stuff just because it's a pain in the rear. Because it's something you don't use once a month, that gas gonna go old on you, it's gonna spoil, and it's gonna, you know, get water in it, it's gonna cause problems. Second thing I had down here, well, the other thing as far as weeds in a smaller garden, these little hoop hoes are really nice. However, they're nice for breaking up when you got really small weeds. If you're letting these weeds get up boot high, you done lost the battle. You're gonna be hand pulling them, and that's a pain. I'm out, like I say, in a very wet area. So when I first came out here, I was trying to garden like I did in West Texas. West Texas, you always got time to weed because it's dry most of the time. But I always run to a stretch of time where we'd go 2 weeks where we'd be wet, and you couldn't really get in there to work it. You try to use this the other hoe, it would kind of gum up. It really wouldn't cut it. It'd be pulling it. It's kind of a muddy mess. And this really wouldn't work that great either. But what I found, and I got it from Haas Tools, because I needed something to keep those weeds down. And one thing I learned from Haas Tools, I didn't think about, when you're weeding in a high rainfall area, you need to get those weeds even before you see them. So I have adapted and went to the wheel hoe. And basically, these things are about $250 for a single wheel hoe. It comes with the little tines on it. And what you want to do with it is you just run, whenever, as soon as that soil crust over, you'll go over the top of it, you break up that crust. When you break that crust up, it prevents those seeds from germinating, or if they have germinated, it'll kill them because it makes that top dry. You're not tilling it up, you're not shattering the soil, you're not messing up your soil structure. You're just going through it, hitting this thing up, and it's a little bit of a workout, more of stamina than it is, you know, because you're just trying to hit the very top of that soil and trying to turn that stuff in, you know, trying to turn that stuff under, kind of like that. And you work it and go on. Now this doesn't have too much grass, so that's the way you do it, you keep it roughed up. So, and again, I do caution you, if you're gardening for money, you're gardening to save money, make sure what you're doing is going to be cost effective. Daddy never sprayed hardly at all with herbicide, with pesticide. Why? Well, back in the 70s, we weren't concerned about the chemicals and taking in chemicals and all that. The fact is, we would spray with anything. We had diazinon, malthon, Dursban, 7 Dust. I know them because everybody used them. Now 7 Dust is, you know, we still got it on the market today. Malthon is one of the last of those types that's on the market. Dursban has been outlawed for home gardeners. Diazinon has been outlawed for home gardeners, and for a reason, because we did not really always read the label and follow the labels on it. When you get into trouble with spraying, it's when you're spraying, it's not. If you go with that pre-harvest interval that's on the label, you wait that 7 days or 21 days or 3 days, whatever it is, that chemical has already broken down and it's not going to be a problem. It's a problem when you're spraying it yourself. So, you know, you got to protect yourself. But Daddy would look at it and say, hey, if I buy and I spend $15 or $10 on this bottle of pesticide, am I going to make any money by spraying it and increasing increasing your production? And normally you wouldn't, because you just didn't use enough chemical to justify it. So we very seldom ever sprayed. We would fertilize once a year. We garden once a year because it's hot in the fall of the year, and you're not going to sit there and use that shovel to dig when it's 100 degrees outside. So we just, and Daddy, to this day, Daddy's never owned a tiller. He still says, you know, it's a one-use, deal. All you can do with the tiller is till. You know, that 8N4 tractor, he justified it because he can shred it, he can plow for grass, he can haul things in. There's multiple things he can do with the 8N4 tractor, and I think it costs you $1,500 to $2,000 or something like that. This, you're going to till with it. That's it. So if you're tilling to make money or to save money, put it down in comments. I may do another video, some other tips of how to do stuff real cheap. And again, it's according to your, what you're trying to get out of gardening. These things I've talked about as far as using synthetic fertilizers. I mean, some people do not use synthetic fertilizers for whatever reason, and I can understand it. Like I say, I use both, but if you're trying to save money, don't sit there and think I'm going to go organic and also save money. It's hard. That's why organic food is much more expensive than non-organic. It's just harder to grow that way. And you may have reasons for not wanting to do that, but you got to figure out which is more important to you. Is it more important to save money, or is it more important to go organic? That's your call. And I don't condemn either person for doing it, and hopefully that's where this video will be taken. I'm not promoting necessarily this style, but sometimes that's the only style they can do. I did one time have a guy that we were going to church with, and he was talking about he was organic gardening and I wasn't. And he was up there bragging about it kind of, and I said, at the end of the day, I said, for the last 3 years, yeah, I've sprayed the pesticides on my fruit trees. And I've used synthetic fertilizers, but you know what? I've ate my own fruit. I said, you're still struggling. You still haven't produced any fruit. You still haven't been, he had pear trees that weren't doing very good. I said, hey, if you take a handful of fertilizer and throw around that pear tree, that'll help it. Now, too much will kill it. I understand that, fire blight. But sometimes people get so enamored, so set on a certain way that they don't think long term. I said, if it doesn't work, if it's not working for you, one time I had somebody on one of the comments say, hey, I'm using Miracle-Gro fertilizer, and I'm trying to go this other way. It's not doing as good. Is there anything wrong with using Miracle-Gro fertilizer? Okay, unless you want to get on the political end of it. Not really. It's not my top choice for in-ground gardening because it's just expensive, and it's got micronutrients that you may not need. So that's what's going to drive the expense up on it. But, get some fertilizers, some low-cost fertilizers that get it where the farmers kind of get it, where they sell bulk fertilizer, and even if you had to buy it in a bag, that fertilizer would be cheaper than what you get at Tractor Supply or Home Depot or Lowe's or all that. And never buy fertilizer. My last tip: never buy any fertilizer that says weed in it. If it says weed and feed or weed on it, it's going to kill your garden. Okay, just get your straight fertilizer. I don't ever suggest buying weed and feed fertilizer, even if you do put it on your lawn, because when you need to put the weed killer down, if that's what you want to do, and I don't use weed killer for my lawn. I might notice it because there's weeds all over it, but because when you're going to control your weeds, it's going to be in the wintertime or in the early spring. When you need the fertilizer is in the later spring, when your grass starts growing well. So when do you either you're putting it down too early for your fertilizer, or you're spraying too late and it's not effective for your weed control. But anyway, not a fan of weed and feed fertilizer, as you can see. But hopefully this video is helpful to you, and not trying to make anybody mad, not trying to promote one way or another. But if you're interested in low-cost fertilizers, low-cost gardening, you're gonna have to do things a little bit different. Raised beds can be too expensive. That big old bed that I've got, I think I spent $150, $175 for the bed itself. If you're gonna buy this stuff from the store, then you're gonna spend that much more. You got $400 on a 32 square foot bed. You can't make money on that. And that may not be your reason. And like I say, I've got one too, that I enjoy gardening, I enjoy the raised bed, but they're not very cost effective. So if you're going for cost effectiveness, you're probably going to go in-ground gardening. Get your compost and organics where you can, but you're gonna have to use some of your synthetic fertilizers, and you're probably not gonna be able to go all organic if you're really trying to save money. And that's just the economics of it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully I didn't make anybody too mad. Thank you.